Sometimes I have seen that the company may not be your peer, but you may be losing talent to that company, and then suddenly, based on talent flow, you have identified a new peer, right?
If you have a large, multifaceted company, your competitors are not always the other companies in your industry. If you have a large IT department or a cutting edge supply chain organization like we do, your competitors might be supply chain organizations in different industries, or tech industry competitors. So the big names there. So you really have to understand who your competitors are that differ from those that are in your industry. How do they operate? How do they attract talent?
Good morning, Cody. Super honored to have you with our podcast. We are launching this Drop Dialogues. We are reaching out to all key industry leaders. Who better to reach out better than you? And I'm super honored to have this dialogue with you. My name is Vijay Swami. As you know, I'm CEO of Drop. Just folks, super honored to be here with Cody, who is really the director of talent intelligence at Johnson and Johnson. As you know, global company with multiple locations to handle the legal and the regulatory challenges and the talent complexities. For the next 20-25 minutes, I'm absolutely delighted to get all his thoughts and brain cells. Thank you, Cody, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you.
Great. Let me kickstart with the question that's probably there in everyone's mind, right? So, how do you view 2025, Cody? There is a lot of excitement among talent intelligence folks. One of the leaders whom I spoke to summarized this really well, right? Like, say, it's like we're going to do everything this year because there's been a little bit of a pause. From healthcare industry perspective, specifically the biopharma perspective that you deal with, how do you feel about 2025 and what are your thoughts? Maybe we'll kickstart from there.
Yeah, I think even more than ever, leaders need the ability and the readiness to be able to adapt and change to changing environments. And from an intelligence perspective, we need to be in a position to present them the right information at the right time, for them to be able to make the right talent decisions, to put the right people in the right places with the right compensation, with the right pipelining of talent. We need to be ready to support them so that they can be ready when these changes occur. So it's not changes for change's sake. It's strategic changes that are coming faster than ever before, probably due to additional information that people have. But it's that readiness. I think if there's anything else, it's really looking at the foundation behind our data that we provide. It's not just the cool insights, but it's also how accurate and quality is the information, both our internal information and the external information. So I think it's readiness and agility, and I think it's some of those foundational elements that feed some of the more advanced things we like to do with data.
Got it. Got it. Perhaps a follow-on question. In one of the conversations that we have had in the earlier times, you made one interesting comment. Like, you are not just a biopharma company, you are a tech company, you are a manufacturing company, and probably a few more classifications that I'm missing out here, right? But you're benchmarking against multiple different types of companies, competing for talent against. So with that future focus, how are you getting ready, Cody, in this what I consider to be the most exciting time for talent intelligence professionals? I wanted to get your thoughts on how should we get ready for this phase, because everybody has this challenge.
Yeah, I think number one, it's partnering with external experts to understand who are your competitors. To really think about that, your competitors, as you mentioned, if you have a large, multifaceted company, your competitors are not always the other companies in your industry. If you have advanced a large IT department or a cutting edge supply chain organization like we do, your competitors might be supply chain organizations in different industries, or tech industry competitors. So the big names there. So you really have to understand who your competitors are that differ from those that are in your industry. How do they operate? How do they attract talent? And then secondarily, I think you need to understand, what are those KPIs? What are those metrics
Mm,
that really matter and can affect both talent and the investment that you put in talent, and how you manage both the talent side of things and the cost side of things as well.
got it, got it. That is well said. If I can kind of piggyback on that question, right? Like you probably know what question I'm going to ask next. In the sense, what are the metrics that are on top of your mind now? The one thing I'm hearing is all the metrics that workforce planning that they've been tracking are become even more important, right? But one thing I'm also hearing is a few interesting different metrics. So but I would like to get your perspective and then see how my notes match with yours.
Yeah, I would encourage any other organization getting into the talent intelligence space to start at the basics, is to start at very simple supply and demand. Demand being, let's start with supply. Supply being the number of talent with a certain skill in a certain organization that a competitor has at this moment, right? Well, that's the status quo. That's where they are today. But something that's ignored from time to time, and I think should be brought more to the forefront, is the demand side of things, trends in demand. And what is demand? That is who your competitors are hiring for. What skills are they hiring for? And by nature of it being demand, it's future focused. It's almost predictive. It's predictive of where your industry or your competitors are going next versus where they are today. So I think that those are two of the most basic fundamental elements that you would start off with. If you have a supply and demand trend line, you're off to running to answering, let's say, 50% of the questions that you could get. Now, on top of that, if I was going to add a third, it might be talent flow. And when I say talent
Got it.
flow, it's the type of jobs or skills that are moving from one company to another, and try to figure out why that is, and how you can capitalize on those opportunities.
So that's a beautiful comment, the third one, right? Connecting back to your earlier comment, sometimes I have seen that they company may not be your peer, but you may be losing talent to that company, and then suddenly, based on talent flow, you have identified a new peer, right? So the fact that that component that you mentioned sort of came to my mind when you mentioned talent flow. Cody, I think one other thing that I've been fascinated in the way you work is like your team. It's just a mix of skills that is doing all this work. Like you have a blend of business and IT, and in general technology and analytical skills. How did you do it in a complex company like J&J, and also how should practitioners think about it? Your advice will be extremely helpful in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this space, but in any other part of, let's say, people analytics or talent management, one of the big trends I'm seeing. You talked about 2025 is I don't think that a small organization can innovate success. A small team within a large company can innovate successfully on its own.
Hmm.
I really believe that it's cross functional collaboration that will breed innovation and drive it. And there's actually studies that talk about that the more that companies operate cross functionally, the more innovative they typically are. So we are not just interested in the talent implications of some of the workforce decisions we make, but we're also interested in the financial implications of those and the balance between the talent and the financial implications for the most optimal outcome. So we not only keep partners close to us that are innovating in different spaces, but we keep enabling partners close about our roadmaps and where we're looking to bring them in and help us with work, if that's our IT partners or our procurement partners. And then the last piece, which I think will come up maybe in later questions, is we can keep our compliance partners really close to us. And they're multifaceted compliance partners. But we believe, and I'll end on this, is that our competitive advantage is not only innovation. Our competitive advantage is compliant innovation.
Hmm.
Because if some other organization innovates faster than us, but they're not compliant, they're going to hit roadblocks. And what we think we're doing is innovating in a regulated and compliant way that will keep that innovation going and unencumbered as we move forward.
Got it. Great. Well said, Cody. In fact, I'm going to, as a follow up question, right? So we all have to talk about this. So AI and the pace at which AI models are disrupting the world. And in your industry, especially, and I've seen this little bit, I was doing some modeling work prior to this meeting. One of the interesting thing I saw in biopharma and as well as banks is their number one AI skill requirement is actually AI governance, right? More than so the actual AI talent. Actual AI talent is also there, but the importance that governance and the compliance gets is absolutely stunning, right? So there's this huge demand on focus on AI governance, ethics, compliance, and so on. And for you, you are more an innovator, agile thinker. Is this actually a struggle for you? And I know you want to be compliant innovation, but it is also going to or does it slow you down in your thinking? Like you're like, I mean, knowing you, you're thinking like, "Hey, let's put all this data and build this model." But how do you manage that, which is absolutely crucial now? The whole world is looking at this.
Yeah, I think in a couple of ways. I mean, from an organizational perspective, we try to get the right people in the room, both technical folks and legal folks in the room, and create councils that kind of review large cases where Gen AI or AI are being used, and then we try to at scale move projects or different ideas through those review processes. And what they're really focused on is how to help that innovation be successful, but in a compliant and a risk mitigated way. So I feel like that these governances enhance and not hinder our
Okay,
ability to be compliant. But also the added advantage, you start to interact with other very smart people that have been doing other projects. So the compliance also brings different innovators together, and it's
got it.
another touch point where you can enhance your work.
So you are able to centralize some AI efforts through that process.
Automate it,
That's a
right?
very good idea.
And then a lot of just philosophy around and guidelines around, look, first, spend a lot of time trying to figure out if your underlying data is correct before you start getting into the world of more fancy analytical approaches. Two, focus a lot on using AI to automate processes,
Okay,
manual processes. And then once you get to informing decisions, and I underline the word informing decisions, because you really want to make sure you have guardrails around a human in the loop, understanding how the analytics is working, and a human making the decision. Where the data and the insights really just informing that decision, it's definitely never making a decision, especially when it comes to people.
got it. One interesting thing that I was at a conference in London a couple of weeks back, and there was a lot of discussion, Cody, on now because of the way we consume data now, like through the chat GPTs of the world, um, it has become even more important to be very precise in our storytelling with broader business. You may have a lot of fancy analysis, but sort of the practitioner was saying, put that in the appendix, just keep the story strong in the front. Uh, what has been your experience? Because with more data, and execs are hungry for data, but at the same time, there is also a need for simplicity and keep the message simple in terms of insights and stories. I know I have observed you do that really well. Like any complex chart, you just put it on as a supporting deck, just focus on the business outcome, right? Even though it sounds simple, many practitioners are struggling in that. So what should they do? What is your experience been, especially to do it in a large company like yours? How have you done that?
Yeah, two things I would call out. But actually, three things. One, start with the business's question. Go to the business through your HR leadership, and determine what are the specific questions they're trying to answer, and then use and go to the data, the underlying data or the user interface. Answer that specific question and come back and tell them the answer. They're less interested in how you got there. As long as you can show that the data is quality, then you tell them the answer to their question, and that's really the story they're trying to get to. So keep it targeted to the business question. Second thing I would say is for larger audiences, and you're trying to help them tell the story, map out the story around possible insights. So when we
Okay.
talk about supply and demand, supply is either going up, down, or staying the same, demand up, down, staying the same. You could sit down and map out what insight would it be telling me about a competitor if their supply was going up? What would the insight be if it was going down? What would the insight be if it was staying flat? What actions could I take based on that? And what guardrails from a talent management perspective or a legal perspective would I tell a leader if they were making some decision? So you can wrap some of that story before you get the
Okay.
insight. The last thing I'd say is just this idea of qualitative insights. We focus a lot in intelligence on quantitative insights, how
Mm.
many of this, what percentage, but there's a whole new world of qualitative insights, whether it be drawn from podcasts, articles people have written, news articles, things like that, talking about companies, and you can really harness a lot of story
Got it.
from those qualitative insights and marry the quantitative and the qualitative together. That's your holistic story.
Got it. There is a lot of insights into that. I may have to sit and unpack a little bit of that. But because you mentioned podcasts, is there anything specific you regularly follow, Cody, for your learning? Any podcasts, any books that you recommend for 2025 and beyond?
Oh well, specifically, I like to listen to podcasts about businesses and how businesses are operating. There's a couple I can't come to mind right now, but one of the things I try to do, one of my dreams, is to look at a business insight, something that's going on with a business. There's really great books called like Good to Great that tell stories about different businesses.
Okay.
Um, and what I like to do is look at changes in business and try to figure out what are the talent implications of those business changes. So a
Got it.
business launches a new product. What are the talent implications? If we can marry up talent insights with business insights, that's really a future. A book recommendation that I love, it just shapes the way I think about things, is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It really points out how if we're not careful, we have the ability of humans to increase our ability to think analytically
Got it.
versus making assumptions. So I always encourage people to check out that book.
Sounds like a good product idea, Cody. It sounds fascinating. And one other thing I'm going to a little bit dial back to your earlier comment. You mentioned that is fascinating to me. You mentioned that we should also focus on demand and understanding that part a little better. And in as much as uh, logical and easy it sounds, is actually a very complex journey for workforce planners to understand demand. Is there anything you can double click bit on that? Largely, I've seen things like business leader interviews, um, but I haven't seen many workforce planners take external data and do the demand modeling themselves. So, any thoughts there? How we should approach it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. Let's say, first things first. Demand data is based on job descriptions, and that, by the way, and that's not people. So you have a lot more leeway in terms of how you work with that data than you would with supply data, which is just is profiles of human beings. So I think in the demand side, it's a large amount of text. It's a large amount of information in these job descriptions. So, with the advantage of large language models to kind of truncate down that large amount of text into a corpus, and then to be able to prompt using Gen AI to prompt a questions about that corpus of information, all
Got
these
it.
job descriptions from a certain company, you can ask Gen AI things like, what are the increasing skills that we see in these? Or where is this company moving next based on the types of job descriptions that they're looking for? So if you were to know that a competitor was starting to hire a lot of a certain type of job, that might key you into it's going to be really difficult for us to hire the same amount of people in the same amount of place. Or we need to differentiate our
Got it.
hiring strategy because we're going to have a lot of competition in this space. But if we move to this location, it would be easier and we might have a different approach to it. So I think that looking at job descriptions and the content of them and what skills are applied in them or illuminated can really help you understand where you're going to have competition or where you could even source talent from.
Got it. Is that, I mean, that's a great insight to me, and I'm sure to all the community here. The Is that where you see from an AI impacting strategic workforce planning standpoint? Is that the variable you think where AI will be very useful? The
Yeah, it's
demand
it
variable. Okay,
absolutely. It's the most amount of text, and
got it.
it's untapped. I mean, I don't know many people who are spending lots of time trying to wrangle job descriptions.
Got it. Got it. No, it's very helpful. Last question, Cody, and then I'll let you go. I know you're super busy. When you look at 2025, 2026, and so on, with the global geopolitical sensitivities that are emerging, what sort of variables you think is important from that global political climate or geopolitical scenarios? How are you bringing that in? Because that seems to be in many selection decisions in the minds of many people. So,
Well, what I'll say to that question is that there's a maturity curve in your understanding of external intelligence, and as I mentioned, start with supply and demand, and really get understanding of that, and then you're going to want to look at maybe geographic factors,
got it.
where talent's located. At a certain level of the maturity curve, you're going to start to want to understand macroeconomic factors, government, how the government decisions impact talent, and even like military and trends and things like that. So you're going to want to understand at a certain level of your maturity curve much more than the supply and demand. And I think
Got it.
those geopolitical factors will come into play. But start with supply and demand and work your way towards maybe these factors that do have an impact, but the percent of the variance that they account for might be smaller, but still, if you can harness them or understand them, you can make better decisions.
Got it. Got it. To wrap up, I'm just going to ask a few quick rapid fire questions and then get your ideas on there. If you don't have an answer, you can just say no comments. Skills or roles?
Skills and with fast follow with experiences.
Got it. Quality of talent or quantity to scale?
Quality of talent.
GPT-4 or DeepSeek?
Oh, I think that there's many more. The plethora of talent is coming forth with new innovations every day. So tomorrow, if I answered that question today, the answer would be different tomorrow. So
Got it.
let's wait
Got
and
it.
see.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. This has been super fun to do this with you. I will conclude here. Audience, you as you could see, a lot of practical tips are embedded in this. I am fascinated by the demand-specific conversations we had, and in a very concise way, Cody also pointed that. AI for workforce planning is really to understand that demand data a lot better, a lot easier. I also loved your views on how to prepare for business meeting, and that's sort of not the time to show off your graphs. Really focus on the insights. I also loved your overall approach on compliance-driven innovation. I think that's absolutely uh, the area that many people do not understand. They kind of understand it after it becomes a problem. So thank you for guiding us through that. There's probably another 10 more interesting points if we listen to this again. Thank you for your contribution, and we are delighted to have you here, Cody.
Thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.